Bob Holliday, WRL.com. Welcome to the ACC, Coach.
Thanks, Bob. Great to be here.
I'm sure going through video of your future opponents, you've noticed that the ACC has a number of mobile quarterbacks. As a defensive guru who has, stopped the great offenses in the Big Ten, how does it complicate your task to have to stop quarterbacks 7-8 times during the season who can run with the football?
You know what? It's something that I think our defense is built for, Bob. I believe that we've seen some pretty good quarterbacks in my last really 13 years of coordinating as of late, and every year you're facing a new guy. That Mariota was a pretty good player a year ago. That we bottled up pretty good, but he's a great player. And I thought he was a quarterback like a Russell Wilson, who was an old ACC quarterback. I think our defense is built to stop spread offenses, and it's something we've had a lot of success at doing through the years.
Pat, Dan Tortora, Broadcast Media. What's the first few months in Pittsburgh been like for you so far?
Dan, it's been 6 months. Seems like it was a month. So everything's gone fast. It's really, I guess the first thing I think about is just the support. Sometimes if you're all by yourself, you have that job and you feel like you're doing it all by yourself, that's an issue. With our Chancellor, Pat Gallagher, you got support from the top to our new AD, Scott Barnes, who's in here today. All our support people, Chris LaSala, my administrative assistant, Vicky. I mean, just everybody makes the job a little bit easier. When you've got support, you feel like you've got people that are intelligent in the situation they're in. I think it makes your job easy. But it's been, obviously a whirlwind. I mean, there's so many things going on, and everything's new. Today's a new day. Coming in here, first day, media day. You don't know what to expect. It's a better looking crowd than I thought. So everything's new, and you just take them as they roll.
We'll go back here to our left, Coach.
Coach Mark Larson, Time Warner Cable News up in Syracuse. 19 wins the last 3 years for this program. It kind of been, at the level of mediocrity. How do you get Pitt back to where Pitt wants to be?
Well, we take it one day at a time. You don't do it overnight. There's no quick fixes. But you start with the people that you're involved with and building relationships with your players. Anywhere I've ever been, my players are going to play their tail off for me because there's a love between the player and the coach. And I think that's where it starts. If you treat your players the way you want to, treat your son, your daughter, they're going to play for you. So it's getting everything out of those kids and giving them everything you've got as well. I mean, if you expect everything from them and you give them nothing, what do you have? And so I think that's where it really starts. It's a relationship and the trust that the players and the coaches are going to have together, and that takes time to build as well. And you got to go through some tough times. You got to go through a tough loss to get that, so they know that you're with them, win or lose. And that's something that we'll build at the University of Pittsburgh.
Back here to our left, Coach.
Coach James Conner had up here in the front.
Okay, I got you.
Player of the year, 135 yards rushing, but Pitt collectively only had 125 yards rushing. As I interpret that stat, that means the rest of the team on the ground was minus 10. Mm-hmm. How do you fix that?
Give it to somebody else, right? He's your workhorse. As I said to someone yesterday, I'd hand him the ball off down here in Pinehurst and let him carry it back to Pittsburgh if I could. We're going to give the guy the rock. I mean, I've been in programs. Le'Veon Bell had, I think, 390 carries one year, his junior year before he got drafted by the Steelers. So, if you got a guy that can carry the rock and he's hot, you're going to keep giving it to him, and you're not really worried about what that other guy does. But we've got some guys, a stable of running backs that we have a lot of confidence in, and when it's their time to show, or we need them, they'll be ready to roll. But not worried about it. I mean, you got the player of the year in the ACC. What should I be really worried about as far as carrying the ball? I mean, that's what tailbacks want to do. He'd be disappointed and saddened if I put him on a bench and said, you carried it too much, or we got to give someone else some rushing yards. I want to get him some more passing yards.
Coach, if it truly is one day at a time, when you go to bed at night, how do you know that you've done what you wanted to do for that day? Where's your sense of accomplishment come from? I
think you're never satisfied as a football coach. I don't think you're ever satisfied as an athlete. I mean, whether you rush for 200 yards in a game or you coached a victory. I know as a defense coordinator in the last several years that, after a game, even if we gave up a yard rushing, you were still disappointed. Like, how did we give up that yard? So you're never happy with what you've done, and you're always looking to get better. So when you put your head down on that pillow at night, you're always wondering, what else could I have done today to get better, and sometimes that causes sleepless nights too.
Question back to our left, and then we'll come up front.
Hey, Coach. Chip Patterson, CBSSports.com. Was there anything that surprised you about your team this spring? I'm sure you had some set of expectations coming in, but then through spring practice and off-season workouts, anything that maybe caught you off guard?
Chip, I guess in a positive way, I guess nothing surprises me as a coach because you've seen everything, when you've coached long enough. But the thing that really surprised me is how quickly our kids bought into what we were doing. Sometimes when you take over, a 1-11 program or a 2-10 program, someone used the word mediocrity earlier, and sometimes even with a mediocre program, when you lose a coach, kids are kind of still, going backwards instead of going forward. And I think the most impressive thing is the way our kids bought into everything we've done. From when we were on the road, recruiting and trying to finish up a class in January, and they're with our new strength coach, who they don't know, and working their tail off, to the end every day. And our strength coach would call me every night, Dave Andrews, and say, "Coach, I've never seen it." He came from Notre Dame. He goes, "Coach, I've never seen guys work like this." So there was an energy by our kids to want to get better, and that's what we've seen. And very, very impressed with, I guess the way that our kids have bought into what we're trying to do and what we want to do.
Front row next to me.
Coach Don Munson from Clemson. What do you feel like you have in Wojtek at quarterback? It's a quarterback-driven game, but what do you feel like that you have from him?
Chad's an impressive individual. From my first phone call to him in January to every meeting I've had with Chad, the first thing I'd say, if he said, "Give me, one word," Chad Wojtek is leader. Okay, we had our winter workouts, 5:30 in the morning, and they're probably, we got some great players here today and yesterday. Probably not a more impressive player as far as a leader and a competitor. So if I want a guy, to touch the ball, it's that guy. And I'm happy with that ball, being able to touch his hands every snap, come from the center, because he's a competitor and he's going to do everything it takes to win. So he's impressive. He really is. Not only academically, but athletically, he's gifted, and he's a super guy. And again, not too many people know this, but in our winter workouts, we had about 6 different groups. He matched up with James Conner every snap throughout the whole workout. Anytime, everything was competitive, go through the bags, whatever it may be, and he would beat James. And he's not a little lighter than James, but he was going to compete against the best every snap, and he was impressive. That was the most impressive thing about him. So he's a leader and he's a competitor.
Back to Dan here in the front row.
Pat, Dan Tortora once again. What can you say about being a part of that Pittsburgh-Syracuse rivalry now, and just knowing some of the guys over on that side?
Is it a rivalry? I guess it's a rivalry in many ways. Me and Scott Schaefer have been really friends for over 20 years now, and really had our first full-time coaching job, I assume, together at the University of Rhode Island. But being that that's our, big rivalry, I guess. To me, a rivalry is something that you I guess, work into. You have to live it before it becomes a real rivalry. So I've got to be in that rivalry really to feel it. Maybe our kids know it better than I do, but we'll get into a game week and figure out all the intricacies of that rivalry. But couldn't be against a better friend than Scott Schaefer.
Coach, back and to the left by the banister.
Yes, good morning, Coach. Mark Miller, Sports Free Radio and the Pennsylvania Sports Network. Speaking of rivalries, with you being the new coach of Pitt and James Franklin being the new coach at Penn State, and the rivalry with that game going to start up again, how important is it for you? Because there's a lot of fans in Pennsylvania that want to see that game every year. Mm-hmm. How do you want to keep that game alive as long as possible too? No question. Being from Pennsylvania, that's a big game. I don't think there's any bigger rivalry than, you can talk about, Syracuse. And again, until I've been in that Penn State rivalry, I think, a game, a win and a loss fuels that rivalry. But in the state of Pennsylvania, Penn State football game is where it starts. And if I think in the state of Pennsylvania, if they could play that game 12, weeks out of the year, that they would vote yes to do that. That's obviously it's an in-state rivalry, and that's a rivalry, and
you know, I'm all for keeping that thing going, and I know Scott Barnes, our athletic director, is working on that.
We'll stay in the back to the left.
Coach Mark Larson again from Syracuse. You just touched on your relationship with Scott. I know you guys were at Northern Illinois together. Can you expand a little bit on that relationship, if you at all reached out to him when you got the Pitt job, and what it's going to be like to play up there at the Dome?
You know, we played up in the Dome when I was at Cincinnati, so it's a fun place to play. Start where you finished. But again, Scott Schaefer and his wife Missy and my wife Donna have been, again, friends for a long, long time. And you know, I didn't call him about, you know, the job or anything, you know, when it came up. Matter of fact, you just try to stay in a little corner. I hung out in my cave in the basement in East Lansing, just kind of hiding out for a while. But tried really, as soon as you tell somebody, you know, it travels. Obviously somebody told somebody something, but it wasn't me. But so I never had that conversation with him. Obviously had it, you know, with him after, you know, I'd gotten hired, and you know, just talked about how, you know, excited we are, you know, together just to be able to play against each other and look at where we were, you know, 25 years ago as graduate assistants. He was at Indiana, I was Miami of Ohio. So again, we've been great friends for years, and you know, their children grew up with our children, and you know, it's just neat to look back and say, hey, that's where we were. This was our dream, and look where we've gotten. We're both now competing in one of the best conferences in the country, and you know, going to be able to go head-to-head on a Saturday, which is really, you know, as a rivalry, not a whole lot of fun, but fun in another way.
Pat, we'll come back to Bob right here.
Coach, Pitt was among the leaders in time of possession, but only in the middle of the pack in terms of scoring. You have Tyler Boyd, one of the top multi-purpose threats in the ACC. How do you intend to use him?
You know, Tyler's a great football player, and again, is smooth, fast, got soft hands, and we're going to try to get the ball to him as much as we can, whether it's handing it off to him in the backfield, trying to get somebody else a carry, or throwing it to him down the field. You know, obviously that's our job, and hired a great offensive coordinator, Jim Chaney, to lead our offense, and I have a lot of confidence that Jim will put Tyler in position to make a lot of plays in different ways and make it hard for people to know where he is.
Anything else for Coach this morning? Pat, once again, welcome to the league.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Folks, Bob.